If you've got no budget, no time, and it is far too late to hit add to cart on Amazon, but you want to DIY a meaningful gift for a certain family member, I have an idea for you. This project was requested to me a while ago by someone, and it was so outside of my normal realm of things. If you know my style, it's a little out there, it's a little creepy, and it's a little weird. This was not it. But it was in the style of the person receiving it, and that's all that matters. This wasn't a one-day build, maybe 2, maybe 3. If you just have a weekend, we can make it happen. I'll be giving you an alternative idea if you really have a time crunch. This is a good project to get you introduced to making signs with your laser, learning some basic woodworking tools if you're interested in taking a step in that direction, and if you're not interested in taking a step in that direction and just want to use your laser, that's the alternative that I'll be showing. So without further ado, let's get started.
For this project, I had it in mind that I wanted to replicate a shiplap look, so I found these pieces of ripped down wood I had lying around in my garage. This was very much a DIY and use what I have at my disposal kind of project. Since these weren't actually shiplap slots, here's how I achieved that look. After measuring the width and height of the combined slots, I then used that measurement to cut down some plywood using a table and miter saw. Now this is where the alternative comes in to use your laser. You can choose to just use a piece of plywood as your backer and put your letters right on that, or if you want to achieve the same type of look, you would start off with a single piece of plywood and you would need an additional piece of plywood to cut down into strips. For example, this sign was 12 inches tall, so I would cut this down into 3 pieces, meaning each piece would be 4 inches tall. Then I would continue on with the same process. Now that I have all my backer pieces cut, it's as simple as aligning them and attaching them with wood glue. The key here is to use as much as possible and clean up any excess or spots by sanding it later. Wood glue does take a while to cure, so I'm going to be adding some clamps so it doesn't move in the process and come back in the morning. Now, as I typically do and obsess over the mock-ups I make, I was realizing that the original pieces that I started this project with didn't really match, so I actually changed the entire thing and went with these ripped down 2x4s, which was a lot more like the grain that I was trying to achieve in the first place. After cutting, sanding, and assembling them like I did before, I moved on to laser cutting the letters. Aside from redoing the process that I just did, this part was actually the hardest for me because I couldn't narrow down which font I wanted to use. Again, this project is not my normal style, so looking for this cursive-y, I don't even know what to call it font, I finally found a matching font pair that made it work. I then used the offset feature on that text to create another layer and add some depth. Next, I cut these letters out using my X-Tool P2. I made sure to save this piece so I can use it as a jig to align my letters later. Moving on to painting. You can choose to hand paint this. I went with spray painting, and here's a quick tip. If you have a bunch of pieces, to avoid losing them and make spray painting a lot easier, using painter's tape, attach them to scrap pieces of wood. And for a super smooth paint job, I recommend starting with filler primer, sanding with 220 grit in between layers, and doing this 2 to 3 times. Then you can move on to your final coat. I went with black for the inside layers and white for the outside. And here's where I got a little experimental. In an attempt to directly match my mock-up, I tried my hand in a technique called Shou Sugi. I'm probably butchering how you say that, but it is a technique of burning wood to preserve it, and it gives it a really cool charring look. I tested it out on the scrap piece in varying distances away from the wood to see the type of effect that it would make. I don't recommend trying this at home. I did this outside in a well-ventilated area with a hose nearby just in case. And here's a technique you can try. Using a wire brush, you can distress the wood to give it that rustic weathered look. I chose to add a frame to my sign, and here's how I did it. Using some leftover 2x4, I marked the thickness of the existing sign and cut it down using the table saw. I did this 4 times and used the miter saw to miter the edges so that they'd fit together. After checking to make sure all the pieces fit, I used wood glue to stick it all together and held it in place with miter clamps. After giving it some time to dry, I used a pin nailer to give it a stronger hold. Then used this magical wood filler to seal up all the holes. Just like my mock-up, I added some color using a black gel stain, wiped it on with a clean rag, let it soak into the wood, then wiped it off, adding just enough color to still be able to see the wood underneath. Next, I added a couple of coats of spar urethane to the frame and the backer. This will help to seal the wood and give it a satin finish. Now it's time to bring everything together and attach it. This is why we kept the piece that the letters came out of. Lining it up with the backer, we're going to use it so that our letters come out perfect. Now don't screw up here, I've done this so many times and have yet to learn my lesson, but you don't want to put the frame directly on top of your backer. There should be at least a little bit of a gap between your backer and the jig. You can add this space using another piece of wood in between, or a quarter, or something thin, so that there's no direct contact. Why, you ask? If you put your jig directly on your backer and try to place the letters, it's going to be impossible to come off. And if you do manage to get it off, your letters might come with it. Lucky enough, it was just one letter that came off, so I used the same jig to place it back. Now, if you scored your letters like a logical human being, then you would not have to do this process that I did, which was use painter's tape to mark along where the inner letters would go, so that I could use a pin nailer to nail them down without them being seen. The pin nails I used were just the right thickness to not go through the sign. Now, you also don't have to do this if you sanded down your backer completely flat, use the planer, and if you're using a strong adhesive. In this case, I'm just using some super glue to hold it into place, and the pin nailer is adding that extra strength. Approaching the finish line for this project, I'm adding the frame and attaching it using the pin nailer too. Then I mixed together some stain and plastic wood to fill those holes so they're not so visible. And last but not least, I used this metal French cleat to make the process of hanging this a lot easier. And here's the final piece. I hope this video taught you something new, or at the very least, this project inspired you to make your own sign or try a new technique. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep getting projects like this and tips along the way. And as always, stay inspired.